My boyfriend asked my estranged parents for permission to marry me, even after I told him not to contact them because of what they did to me. He did it anyway. We've been together for about 2 years now. Well, he counts it as two, but I only count about a year and a half because we were just friends with benefits in the beginning. Not that it really matters for this situation. It's just one of those little things we used to jokingly argue about. He always said we were together from the moment we first hooked up, and I always insisted it didn't count until he asked me to officially be his girlfriend. He's my first serious relationship since my divorce. Yeah, divorced at 22. It's complicated, and I'll get to that. Things between us were mostly good. He's sweet most of the time, thoughtful, has a good job, and even got along with the few friends I have. He's traditional in a lot of ways, very family-oriented. He calls his parents twice a week, spends holidays with them, and really believes in doing things the right way. I should mention this now. I don't speak to my parents. I haven't spoken to them since I was 16. I'm not going to go into detail here about why, but trust me, they are horrible people. Not speaking to them is honestly the kindest thing I could have done, considering what they put me through. I've spent years trying to deal with it. I still have nightmares sometimes. At 16, I literally married my best friend just to get out of my parents' house. That's the legal age for marriage in my country, and it was the only way I could get away without them dragging me back. I'd tried to run away before. That didn't end well. My best friend saw everything that was happening firsthand and wanted to help. We got married as a way to give me legal freedom. We stayed married through college. It helped with things like loans and housing. About 5 years later, we divorced. We're still really good friends. I kept his last name permanently just to cut any remaining connection with my family. He's actually the one who introduced me to my current, now ex-boyfriend. When I started dating him, I made it clear that I didn't talk to my family. I didn't go into detail. I just said we were estranged and I had my reasons. He seemed to accept that and never pushed for more, which I appreciated. He'd occasionally mention family events and invite me, but never made a big deal if I avoided the topic. If he asked questions about my childhood, I'd deflect or change the subject. I wanted to tell him everything. I've wanted to for a while, but it's really hard. Like, physically hard. Every time I tried, my throat would close up. I'd start shaking and panicking. My therapist, when I could still afford one, said it was a trauma response. I'd planned to write it all down for him one day, but I kept putting it off. I was scared. Scared of how he'd react. Scared he wouldn't believe me. Scared I'd break all over again just by putting it into words. Then, a few months ago, my mom found me on Facebook. I had deleted my old account years ago, but made a new one in November. Forgot to fix the privacy settings. She messaged me right before Christmas, asking if she and my dad could see me on Christmas Day. Just seeing her name on my screen gave me a full-blown panic attack. I actually threw my phone across the room and had to take one of my anxiety meds just to calm down. My boyfriend was there and saw the whole thing. He picked up my phone and asked what was going on. I was still pretty out of it, but I managed to tell him my mother had contacted me. He was confused. He knew I was estranged from them, but he didn't know the full story. I'd only ever said, "I don't talk to them," and left it at that. He started asking more questions, wanting to know why a simple message could upset me so badly. I told him she somehow found me, but I wasn't going to respond. I told him I had my reasons. Serious reasons. And that I would explain one day when I was ready. He said that was good enough for him. He'd wait until I felt comfortable. I blocked her on Facebook, locked all my settings down, and tried to move forward. But I was rattled. For weeks after, I was jumpy, couldn't sleep, and kept having nightmares. My boyfriend noticed, but he didn't push. He was actually really supportive, made me tea when I couldn't sleep, stayed up late to hold me through panic attacks. It made me feel safe enough to believe that maybe I could eventually tell him the full story. About 3 months ago, we moved in together. Things were good. Last week, he brought up our anniversary coming up and asked if I wanted to do something special. I said we could just have a quiet dinner at home. He insisted on something fancy. I agreed because he seemed excited, and I thought it'd be nice to get dressed up for once. So tonight was our anniversary. 2 years, or a year and a half, depending on who you ask. He took me to the same fancy Italian place, Dubware. So tonight was our anniversary. 2 years, or a year and a half, depending on who you ask. He took me to the same fancy Italian place where we had our first official date. It's way out of our usual budget, but he said he'd been saving for it. I thought he was just trying to make the night special, but the whole evening he was acting weird, nervous, fidgety, kept checking his phone. I thought maybe he was worried about the cost or that something was wrong. Then dessert came, and suddenly he got down on one knee, right there in the restaurant. People noticed. Some pulled out their phones to record. I hate that kind of thing, but in the moment, I couldn't even focus on them. I was just shocked, happy for about 5 seconds, until I saw the ring. It was my nan's ring. I recognized it instantly. My nan was the only truly good person in my family. She always told me she wanted me to have that ring someday. But she died when I was 14. The ring went to my parents. I hadn't seen it in over 6 years. I froze. He was saying something. Something sweet, I'm sure. Words about loving me, wanting to spend forever together. But all I could think was, how does he have my nan's ring? I asked him where he got it. He smiled and told me he'd gone to see my parents. After my mom messaged me in December, he'd secretly written down her name and contact info. A few days later, he reached out to her, told her he wanted to propose. He met with both my parents at their house. They gave him my nan's ring. He said all of this like it was something sweet, something to be proud of, like he was proving how traditional and thoughtful he was. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. He knew I was estranged from them. He knew I had real serious reasons for not talking to them. He knew I wasn't ready to talk about it. He promised he'd wait until I told him. Instead, he went behind my back, met the very people I've spent years protecting myself from, and then used my grandmother's ring, the one good family memory I had, as part of some romantic surprise. I don't even remember exactly what I said after that. I was crying, probably yelling. Everyone was staring. I told him no. I told him I never wanted to see that ring again. I left and took an Uber home. When I got to our apartment, I started throwing his stuff into a suitcase. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed him out. He showed up about 20 minutes later. I was still grabbing his stuff, shirts, socks, whatever I could find that was his. He looked completely confused, like he didn't understand why I was upset. Like this wasn't the exact boundary I told him never to cross. He tried to talk to me, said I was overreacting, said he was just trying to do the right thing, said it was a surprise, and I ruined a special moment. I told him to take his stuff and leave. I needed space. I don't think I officially broke up with him. I just told him to go stay with his sister for a while. He left eventually, still confused, still not understanding what he did wrong. Then the texts started, the calls, the voicemails, nonstop. His messages were all over the place, some apologizing, some accusing. He kept saying things like, I didn't give them your address, just your city, or I was trying to do something meaningful. He doesn't get it. His sister, who I'm actually friends with, messaged me too, asking what happened. Apparently, he showed up at her place crying with a suitcase, but wouldn't tell her anything except that I kicked him out. I haven't responded to either of them. I don't even know what to say. How do I explain this without unpacking years of trauma I've worked so hard to lock away? How do I explain how deep the betrayal is? I haven't responded to either of them. I don't even know what to say. How do I explain this without unpacking years of trauma I've worked so hard to lock away? How do I explain how deep the betrayal is? Maybe now I have no choice. Maybe I have to tell the whole story just so he understands why this was never just about a surprise or a tradition. Yes, he's traditional. Yes, he's family-oriented. I knew that going in. I also thought he respected me, that he respected my one clear boundary. I thought he understood that this wasn't some petty grudge. He saw how I reacted to a message from my mother. He saw me literally collapse into a panic attack. I told him, I'll explain when I'm ready. He said he'd wait. He didn't wait. And worse, he gave them information about me, where I work, what I do, what city I live in. I've spent years hiding those things. And now they know. He says they didn't ask for much, that they just want to reconcile, that everyone makes mistakes as parents. He says my dad wants to walk me down the aisle someday, that my parents want to meet our future children. He actually said those things to me. Reading those words made me feel physically ill, and I know they fed him some sanitized story. One of his texts said they told him I ran away because they grounded me, that I was acting out, that I refused to follow rules. It's total garbage, but I can tell he believes it. He believes them, the same people I fled from. He's known me for 2 years. He knows I'm not unstable. He knows I've worked hard to build a life, but after one meeting with them, he's doubting everything I ever told him. Or didn't tell him, I guess. And I keep thinking, maybe I should have told him sooner. But talking about what happened to me isn't just hard, it's triggering. Every time I tried to say it out loud, I'd shut down. That's why I was writing it all down, slowly when I was ready. It's not me being manipulative. It's not drama, it's trauma. That's why this hurts so much. Just this morning, I was picturing our future together. A home, maybe kids someday, maybe even healing. And now all of it feels poisoned, tainted by what he did. My nan wanted me to have that ring. That ring was supposed to mean something beautiful. But now, all I see when I think of it is them. Their house, their voices, their lies. That ring doesn't feel like hers anymore. It feels like theirs. And even now, hours later, I keep going back and forth. Am I overreacting? Am I being too dramatic? Then I remember what my parents actually did to me. The things I'm not ready to type out, even here. And I know I'm not overreacting. He crossed the one line I begged him not to. Please, I need someone to help me make sense of this. I would normally talk to a therapist, but I haven't been able to afford one in years. And it's the middle of the night, and I haven't slept, and I keep checking my phone and rereading his messages and crying all over again. I don't even know what to do. But I do know this. I feel betrayed in a way I've never felt before. After everything that happened, I barely slept. I spent most of that night crying, scrolling through his messages, reading them over and over. He kept texting, back and forth between saying sorry and saying I was blowing it out of proportion. He said he was just trying to help, that it was supposed to be a surprise, that he still didn't understand why I was so upset. The next morning, I couldn't stop crying. I called out sick from work. I didn't trust myself to even get through a sentence. At one point, he came by the apartment and knocked, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. He left flowers and a handwritten note at the door, still apologizing, still saying he didn't get why I was reacting this way. That's when I knew, if I didn't tell him the truth, he'd never stop believing his version of what happened. But I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't sit there and say it out loud without support. So I called my ex-husband, the one who helped me escape when I was 16. He's the only person who knows everything. I figured if I froze up, he could help fill in the gaps. When I called him, I found out something that made everything worse. He told me my boyfriend had already asked him about my parents 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Apparently, my boyfriend had gone to him asking about my family situation. My ex told him it was up to me to share that when I was ready. My boyfriend had nodded and said he understood, said he would wait. He lied. He'd been thinking about contacting my parents for months. It wasn't just some impulsive decision after the Facebook message. He planned it. He hid it, and he waited until he had an excuse to act on it. My ex hadn't told me about that conversation at the time because I'd just asked my boyfriend to move in with me, and he didn't want to ruin it for me. He apologized for keeping that from me, promised he wouldn't do it again. I was furious, heartbroken all over again. This wasn't a split-second mistake. This was deliberate. My ex came over the next day and we sat in my apartment, talking through everything. He was pissed, offered to tell my boyfriend off permanently for me. I said no. As angry as I was, I felt like my boyfriend at least deserved to hear why I was this hurt, even if we couldn't fix it, even if it didn't change anything. So, I texted him and asked him to come over so we could talk. He replied immediately, said he'd be there right away. When he arrived and saw my ex sitting in the living room, he immediately got tense. Asked why he was there. I told him he was there for emotional support while I explained what my parents had done to me. My boyfriend didn't like it. He sat down anyway, but he glared at my ex like he was the problem. I started talking. I laid it all out in the bluntest way I could. I didn't sugarcoat a single thing. I didn't ease into it. I just said it. The worst things, the truth. And before I could even finish, he interrupted me. They told me you'd lie. He actually said that, to my face. After I finally opened up, after years of silence and pain, he said the people who abused me told him I'd lie and that he believed them. My ex stood up and told him to watch how he was talking to me. My boyfriend snapped back, saying he'd talk to me however he wanted, told my ex to stay out of it. Then he turned back to me and said that he knew the truth, that he was just trying to help, that he stayed with me despite all my issues. According to him, my parents told him I was unstable, refused to see doctors, and got into trouble with the law as a teenager. They said I ran away because I didn't want to face consequences. None of that is true. I've never been arrested, never been in legal trouble. I've seen therapists multiple times whenever I could afford it. My parents were the unstable ones, but he didn't want to hear that. He'd made up his mind. I started crying again, and my ex told him he had 30 minutes to pack his stuff and get out. If he said another word to me, he'd be physically removed. My boyfriend looked like he wanted to argue, but instead, he stormed into the bedroom, threw his stuff into bags, and left without saying anything else. After he was gone, my ex stayed with me for a few hours just to make sure I was okay. I was a wreck. I couldn't believe this man, the man I thought I'd spend my life with, had chosen to believe my abusers over me. After everything we shared, after 2 years together, one meeting with them was all it took for him to doubt me. Later that night, he texted me again, said he was sorry for how things went down, but that he still thought I was misremembering things, that my parents seemed like good people, that they were genuinely concerned and wanted to rebuild our relationship. He said he was trying to help me by bringing them back into my life. That was the last straw. The next day, I checked my work voicemail. There was a message from my mother. She had called my job, asked for me, tried to come by. Which means, despite what he says, my ex-boyfriend gave them enough information to find me. He knew I hadn't spoken to them in a decade. He knew I got married at 16 just to escape. He knew I still had nightmares. He knew I would explain when I was ready. And despite all that, he went to them, believed them, gave them my full name, the city I live in, the company I work for. Maybe not the exact address, but it's enough. If they want to find me, they can. My ex-husband offered to stay with me for a while. I accepted. I'm scared now. I feel exposed. I'm looking into a restraining order. I'm also considering moving. Again. Just when I started to feel settled, safe, he destroyed that. His sister reached out too. She was horrified. I didn't tell her the full details about my parents, just that he went behind my back and met them, knowing I was estranged for very serious reasons. She apologized, said she never thought he'd do something like that, offered to help however she could. I've been staying home from work these past few days. Told my boss I had the flu. I'm going back tomorrow. I can't afford to lose my job on top of everything else. I'm going to talk to HR about blocking calls from my parents and maybe changing my extension. As for the ring, he still has it. I don't even want it anymore. I know my nan wanted me to have it, but I think she'd understand why I can't take it now. To everyone messaging me for details about what my parents did, stop. I'm not sharing that. If I was ready to talk about it, I would have. All you need to know is, it was bad enough to justify permanent, total estrangement. It was bad enough that I married at 16 just to escape. To the people suggesting there's something going on with my ex-husband, no, absolutely not. He's engaged to someone else. He's helping me because he's a good person who went through it with me the first time. To those asking why I don't just move cities, I'm trying, but it's not that simple. I have a good job. I can't just uproot everything overnight. Moving takes time, money, planning. I'm figuring it out. I have a lawyer appointment next week to discuss the restraining order. I'll update if anything big happens. But for now, I just need to step away. I need to protect my mental health. I loved him. I trusted him. And in the end, he didn't respect me enough to believe me. He thought he knew better. He thought they knew better. And now, everything's broken.